for today, for the third session, it's about your support network. So I'm going to share my screen in a moment, and just let you know, it's from Who Cares. A lot of the info is from here, how to care for yourself whilst caring for a loved one. And there's a lot of information in there, but I'm just taking some succinct chunks for you, bite-sized pieces that you can start to use today. So I'm just going to share my screen and bring that up. Here we go, with the wisdom to empower. And then I'm just going to press play somehow. There it is. Let's just turn that off. Here we go. Okay, can you see that okay? Great, thank you. Brilliant. Okay, wisdom. So session 3, your support network. And like I say, have a pen and paper handy if you can. That will be great. So let's have a look at your support network, because I think for a lot of us, as I was when I was caring, I found it quite stressful, and I did find myself quite isolated. Maybe you have too. So if you've got any thoughts on that, let me know, put it in the chat. And, you know, our world becomes a much smaller place, doesn't it? If we're caring for somebody behind closed doors at home, you're focusing on them. Your world, their world, it just revolves around you at home, caring for them. And a lot of friends or family, you don't see them quite as much, especially with COVID. I can't even imagine what you guys have been through. Another extra pressure for you. And how do you go looking for something that you don't even know exists? So all that support network that is out there, all the various charities, via social services as well, all sorts of things are going on in your community. But often we don't really know that it's out there, do we? So how do you know? Well, put the feelers out. And it took me years to find the different various support bits and pieces for me and for my husband, for Neil, which were really useful for me. And you kind of think, God, I have so much to deal with anyway. Do I really have, is it down to me to look? And actually, at times I found, yes, for me, I found I had to put the feelers out. There's so much great work by other charities out there. We don't actually sometimes realize, asking other carers or asking all sorts of people. So just getting that into your mind, ask yourself, maybe jot these points down. First of all, list of all the services and charities that you use or have used. And sometimes we use a particular charity for a little while and, you know, we're getting great stuff, benefits from them, but then there might be another one down the road that's doing something a bit different. You know, we used to get massages of all things by the Mulberry Centre here by Twickenham Hospital, which was fantastic. And then there were support network groups there for me as a carer. And a lot of charities, you know, they might be for somebody in particular, like, I don't know, with Alzheimer's or dementia, but then they'll be supporting the carer as well. So it's great to have a look and ask. So jotting those down is really good. And list all the services and charities that you haven't, maybe you've not been aware of. Google it, search it, or even ask your local carer centre, what else is available for me in this area? And of course, nationally, like Carers UK, doing fantastic work. So it's good to get these down, and also think about all your friends and family who do support you. I know that not everybody is as supportive as you would like them to be. I know that all too well. We've talked about that before, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But have a think about all those that do support you and who are there, and sometimes maybe give them a ring, see how they're doing and see what more you can do with them. And have you looked lately to see what could be available for you? Because there'll be quite a few other things out there that you're not even aware of. Put out that search, put out those feelers, really important. Okay. So have you looked online? Of course, I've been talking about these just now, to see what local and national charities have to offer. Have you subscribed to newsletters? I mean, Carers UK is great for theirs, but I know with my local, like Richmond Carers Centre, they put a great long fangled newsletter of bits, and so do I as well. So you can always go to my website, and if I see anything with Carers UK, I actually put the link into the newsletter as well. And maybe, like I say, specific conditions with those charities often support carers. Have a look. Maybe look online to see what your local council or your state have services to support you. Maybe give them a call. Just give them a ring out of the blue saying, hey, you know, what are you doing for carers at present? What's available? And for me personally, I've spoken to other carers to see what services they use. So if you're in a carer support group, or, you know, on Zoom having a cuppa, which you often do maybe with Carers UK, carers can be a plethora of knowledge of what's available. I sometimes found out that our theatre down the road, that carers got in free. I found out that from another carer. I also found out about paid carers, private carers, through other unpaid carers. It's a bit of a mouthful, but, you know, it's hearing on the grapevine of what's available can make your life so much better. It certainly did me. Even asking doctors, nurses, district nurses, if they're coming in, healthcare professionals, if they have any ideas, jotting them down, getting that list ready, just in case you need it. Okay, I'm going to come out of here because I'm going to be talking about something in particular, taps and drains. So I might as well just come out of that. And funnily enough, I'm seeing this friend shortly, who I haven't seen for a while, but she's absolutely great because she's like head honcho in HR, so she kind of knows this stuff. So when I fell ill of caring for Neil for all those years, and I'd come back home and I was looking after Neil, but this time I was caring for myself because I knew that I had to look after me, otherwise he'd end up dying in a home. And my good friend Jo came, and she was here in the kitchen with me to have a cup of tea and asked me how I'm doing, because she knew I wasn't doing so well. And I said, you know what, Jo, I can do this. I can care for Neil. I can do all this. But you know what really knocked me sideways, because I've got so much to deal with? It was a particular friend and family member. You know, they can see I'm caring for a terminally ill husband, but instead of going, hey, how can I help? What can I do? Instead, they were putting on me, judging me. Oh, what's she doing now? You know, why are you doing it like that? Or causing me grief. And I said, I just didn't have the energy for it. And with that, Jo said, well, people in your life are like taps or drains. Taps are those people in your life who are loving and giving. They fill you up and they have your best interest at heart. They don't have a hidden agenda. Those kind of people who are really there for you. And drains, well, I think it says it all, doesn't it? Drains just drain you, and they put on you, maybe they're judging, maybe they're causing you grief. Oh, in that split second for me, it was a massive eureka moment. And what I've been noticing, I've been thinking about these two people. When are they going to help me? They were never going to help me. They were never going to be there for me because they were drains. And they're not bad people, drains. They're just people who probably have a lot of things going on with themselves that they can't see beyond their nose to see how you are and what is going on. So, oh yes, says Belinda, been there. So thank you for that. And yeah, thank you. Lynn says social prescribing via GP can help signpost groups. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Social prescribing is fantastic. Lovely. So I'm going to share again on the screen. So really interesting. The taps and drains, very simple, but really effective. I still use it today, as I know many other carers do as well. I think there's been drains and radiators have been said before as well. Really useful. So I'm just going to share my screen and carry on. Okay. Here we go. So taps and drains. And I laughed with Jo and I said, well, these people are drains. I mean, you know, now I know not to expect anything from them, then I won't be disappointed, just get on with what I'm dealing with. And after Jo had gone, I really loved this so much that I went and got a sheet of paper, sat here at the desk, and then lined down the middle of the page, taps and drains, I put at the top. I just went through everybody in my life and at that time. Are they a tap or a drain? Tap or a drain? I thought it very, very quickly. I gave myself a second for each one and I jotted them down. After a few minutes or so, I'd come to the end and I sat back and I looked at the lists. Oh my God, Sarah, look at the extensive list of taps in your life. But it was very surprising for me to see who turned up in drains. And look, not everybody's always going to be ridiculously draining all of the time, but they were the majority of the time quite draining for me. And I just didn't have the time and the energy. I'd already fallen ill. I needed to make sure I was okay. I said, Sarah, make sure you surround yourself with those taps. So I say that to you too. Make sure you surround yourself with them and fill yourself up. And when it came to those 2 drains, when it came to the friend, I didn't see her again. I chose to kind of call it a day. But with the family member, I just kept myself a little distant. I kind of emotionally let them go. And if I saw them, I saw them. If I didn't, I didn't. But if they said anything like flippantly or caused me any grief before, I knew that that's how they were. I just wouldn't take it to heart and allow it to drain me. Very interesting. And I'm sure, is there anything coming up in the chat there, Michael? I think somebody's just...
Yes, we have. We've had a post from Mo, thanks Mo, who says, you have to be very brave and make the move to change, get drains away or see less of them.
Thank you, Mo. That's brilliant. Yes, see less of them. And I've known of other carers, I'm going to be really honest with you, where they've chosen to kind of either fall out or cut certain family. I know of a number of them who've done that actually, and that's their personal choice. Personally, for me, I just didn't want to go down that road. I could have done, but I just didn't want to fall out with family on top of all that was happening. I knew that it would cause more grief probably in the long run. So I just kept them emotionally at arm's length. And actually, it just changed my perspective and I felt so much better. It made sure that I was more resilient, as that's what we need to be, don't we, as carers? Really important. So such a very powerful one for us as taps and drains. So when you hang out with the taps in your life, how do they make you feel? Maybe you want to pop that in the chat for me. How do taps make you feel? Please do pop that in the chat. Just makes me feel better. I don't know about you, but makes the world a better place, doesn't it? Made me feel happier, stronger even.
So Sarah, yes, we're getting a few comments. Mo says wanted, needed, happy. Carolyn says uplifted and re-energized. Laura says, Laura, I think you may be talking about the drains. She says,
tell us about your drains, Laura. Let's hear about the drains. I was going to come on to that next.
Okay. Magda says, make me feel understood and valued. But Linda says, the taps in my life make me feel I can cope with this and even do a good job of it.
Brilliant.
Michael, they keep him going. And Tony, supported and understood.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much for those. There's some great whole load of things there, actually. And then, of course, when it comes to thinking about somebody draining, and I think we all have drains in our lives. It's part of the course, I'm afraid, when it comes to family or friends. How do they make you feel when you've been hanging out with them? So you've got that other one there, Michael.
Yes. So Laura said, useless, exhausted, overwhelmed. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Yes, it is horribly draining. I think we've got so much to deal with anyway when it comes to caring, being drained and being put on, being judged, it's awful. It makes you feel even worse. So we do need to be aware and just manage who is around us and who we decide to let into our close-knit circle. Really important.
Yeah, a couple more coming in, Sarah. So Mo says, yeah, tired, fed up, used. But Linda says, the drain, a singular family member makes me feel incredibly anxious, stressed and upset.
Oh, it's a real shame, isn't it? It's really awful when you think about that. And I wonder if they knew how you really felt, they'd probably be quite upset, actually. I don't think sometimes people don't even realise how they are being and what the effect that they're causing. Do they? They just don't seem to understand.
Yeah. Low and worthless, says Tony.
Oh, thank you for that, Tony. And it's not just people. When you've visited certain places, which fill you up and which leave you feeling drained. So for me, I remember Neil had chemo for 5 years, chemotherapy for 5 years, and we were in that blinking hospital for a long time. Those are years that I'll never get back in that waiting room. And I found it horribly draining. It's very stressful because people there were having chemotherapy. It was unpleasant and they were stressed as well. I could feel it. And sometimes I'd pop out to go and have a cuppa on my own while he was in there so I could fill myself up again. So what places do you feel that drain you?
Just to share, just while people are adding to the chat, Lynn says it can be so hard to ask for help or support. We have to remember that people aren't mind readers. If we ask for help, we might be surprised, hopefully positively.
Yes, I mean, it is that drop the mask, isn't it? Drop the mask and ask again. Just let them know how you're feeling, you know, and then say to them, what's your diary like? When can you come? And just put the ball in their court. Just ask. That's all you need to do. And at least then they know, and they'll be thinking about it. Because like you say, they're not mind readers. And often we put on this brave face and they think, oh, he's doing it, she's doing, so, you know, I don't need to worry about it. But we do need to let them know, stop suppressing your emotions. I did as well. It doesn't do you any good. Always good to ask.
Yeah, Michael says hospital has drained my strength.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard one. It's a tough one. And of course, there's places, of course, that fill you up. So, I mean, I've not popped that down here, but, you know, what places fill you up? Is there any places? I take Roxy Dog down to River Crane here in Twickenham. Love going down there through the trees. You know, it takes you away to another place, doesn't it, nature? It really does.
So yeah, Magda agrees with that. Being out in nature energizes me, spending time with friends.
Brilliant. Spending time with friends, good mates who really get you, where you can have a laugh and just tell them anything. That's really powerful. Really good.
Laura says being by the sea, and Tony says nature, especially streams. Marilyn says parks, greenery fills you up. So yeah, lots of people mentioning nature.
Wonderful. And it's so good for you actually when you do get out, because you actually breathe in these microbes when you're in between the trees and in nature, which are really good for you, for your health, for your mental health, as well as your physical health, actually, that we've come to learn, which is really interesting. So it's good to be aware of who fills you up and who depletes you. And sometimes we're not aware of that. Sometimes you feel somebody who seems okay, you feel a bit exhausted after you've been hanging out with them. Just notice what's happening for you, just being more aware and maybe having less time with those people who drain you. And if that, like I say, could you spend less time with those drains? Then fill yourself up afterwards. Do something for you to make yourself feel better. And are you able to spend more time with the taps in your life? And you could write your list like I did and focus on, surround yourself with them. For me, it was like a game changer. Most definitely. I was suffering the fools gladly, as I would say. I really struggled because I just was such a people pleaser. I wanted to be there for everybody and wondering what, and thinking they were like me. And not everybody is.
Sarah, there's been an interesting question in the chat from Salima,
Yep.
which Susie has agreed with as well. That I suppose it's relating to the taps in our lives. So she's saying, how do you know if someone is willing to support you by just listening to your problems on the phone? I might be draining them.
Well, that's a very good point. Thank you for that, Salima. Yes, I mean, I talked about that in the past, where if you're, you know, if you go out and you're seeing friends or you're on the phone and chatting to somebody, it's good to let them know how you're feeling, let them know what's going on. But to keep talking about illness and issues, it's not then just draining for you, it's draining for those as well who are listening. So kind of maybe look at speaking about it, talking about it, but then changing the subject, going on to other things that make you feel better. Like I say, it's good to air so that you need to vocalize it. Two heads are better than one. And sometimes people then suggest, well, why don't you do this, do that? And we brainstorm, a bit like that check-in that I would do every Sunday evening with Nadia next door. How have I been feeling? What's been going on? What can I do differently? But then just don't focus on that all the time. And yes, we can become drains ourselves. I felt like it as well before, where you know, it all becomes all consuming and it kind of takes up most of the evening, and then you feel drained from it as well. So be aware of that and try and change the tone and think about the good stuff, because there's always still some good things to be chatting about and focusing on. Is there any comments there, Michael?
No, well, just lots of people agreeing with
Yeah.
Salima's question, really, of saying they feel similarly, that they're not sure, are they being a drain on other people? But
it's interesting, because I know of one particular carer that she's told me in the past that there's a lot of illness in her family, like there's loads, and there were people who came into her life, like new friends, but then they were gone quite quickly. And she even thought that maybe it's because all that's going on and that what she keeps talking about, it's just draining. And people are like, people have got other things that they're dealing with as well, probably. None of us get away scot-free, do we? It's part of life. We all go through challenges. So just be aware, and then sometimes just over to them, ask them how they've been, what they've been doing, and also be a tap for them, be taps for our friends as well, because of course it's a two-way street when we're being there with a conversation with good friends and family, being there for them as well, and talking about those good things and things to look forward to. So yeah, it's a tricky one. So it's just trying to get it ready, but ensure that you enjoy time with your taps in your life. Really important.
Yeah, and sounds like Tony is one of the taps as well. She says, I'm usually the listener. And Magda says, I find people who are willing to listen do really care, and it's not necessarily draining for them because of that. No,
and people genuinely do care. We all have friends and family who do genuinely want to make sure that you're okay. And it's wonderful to have that in our lives. So, focus on those people who are there for you. I know I've spent evenings where I've talked about illness all evening, and it's kind of wasted the evening when I could have been out. I even talk in my book about being away on a week away for respite care, and Neil was in the hospice for the week, and I ended up telling a woman all about my issues and made her cry. I was the ultimate drain, so I've done it before, and as she cried, I just thought, yeah, don't do that again. Just give them a very brief synopsis and then move on to better things, because then you'll feel better for it as well.
Yes, and Dorothy says, yeah, people can't cope if you're talking about having too many problems. And
yeah, that's right, Dorothy, absolutely right. It's kind of just bring it down, make it a little bit briefer as well, because we all want to enjoy our days, don't we, all of us. And coming on from that, conflict in relationships, because I know that for us when we're caring, sometimes, if a loved one's fallen ill within a family, dynamics might change, things might shift. So for me, for example, more than Neil's wife, I kind of felt like his mum half the time because of how things were. People even thought, like I say, I thought he was my dad because he looked older in the way that he was. And of course, sometimes these conflicts come up, and I feel carers, because they're great empaths and usually quite sensitive, nobody likes a conflict, do they? It's quite awful. And there's this I love this psychology by Dr. Stephen Cartman called the drama triangle. Really simple, but very effective if you're dealing with a dispute or something that's going on. So let me just share this with you. Okay, so there's those 3 prongs on the triangle there. And so if there's an issue, or there's a debate, a heated debate, or a conflict happening at present, then first off, there is the persecutor, somebody going, you're this, you're that. And you maybe think of somebody who's quite like that. They may be quite judgmental, quite opinionated. You have the persecutor there. Then there is the rescuer. And I feel with rescuer, a lot of carers are rescuers just by the nature of the way that they are. And it's like, how can I help? What can I do? How can I change this to make it better when these conflicts are arising? And then finally, at the bottom, there's the victim. And the victim in a conflict, oh, well, this always happens to me. Oh, I knew you'd say that. Oh, I can't help it. And it's kind of that kind of mentality, like, focusing on themselves and what they can't do. And for all of us, depending on the conflict, we can switch from one to another of what's going on. But predominantly, as I find, somebody will be a particular one when conflict arises. And you may know of people in your life that are those particular. So maybe even have a think about, which role that you play. So I'm just going to go through the persecutor role. If you think you may be the persecutor during a conflict, easily becoming frustrated with others, try listening instead of blaming. There are two sides to every story. And be diplomatic in your approach and explain your side of the dispute. Sometimes just sharing and making it clear, communication is key. And set boundaries. If you make an agreement, make it clear. If you stick to your side, then expect them to stick to theirs. So that's the persecutor. And then the rescuer role. If you often find yourself wading in, wanting to help and fix others, which I find carers do, you are likely to be a rescuer. Jot them in the chat if you're finding yourself maybe being that. Try supporting and encouraging others to solve their problems. I don't know about you, but because you're busy, it's like that oxygen mask, on a plane, put yours on first. Not only do we not put our own first, but we put it on our loved one. We then start to help rescuing everybody else. Let me put the oxygen mask on you while you slowly wither. No, sometimes, it's not for you to wade in and have to help and support everybody else. Support yourself. Ask others what they think they may need to do to improve the situation. So instead of going in and helping, maybe stepping back and allowing them to think about it for themselves. Otherwise, sometimes people will never learn because you're too busy doing it all for them. And again, really important for us as carers, set boundaries in the time that you spend in helping them. Otherwise, you're just going to be exhausted, you're going to be overwhelmed. And remember, if you're already caring, you have enough on your plate. You cannot save everybody, although we sometimes try to. Michael, is anybody coming in?
Yes, we've got welcome to Mateja. And we have a couple of comments in the chat. So Laura says, I try to talk about the positives when I can as well. Helps me to remember. Yeah, actually, that's the only.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we're going to go back now to victim role. And listen, we've all been one of these at some stage anyway. Finally, if you're finding yourself feeling helpless and overwhelmed, me too, don't worry. Sometimes you're in the victim. And if so, try becoming a survivor or a problem solver. Decide what steps that you need to solve an issue. What do you need to do? And what can you take control of? We can't control everything, but there will be certain things, even how we react to others. It's up to us. And reflect to what is going right in your life. What are you grateful for? This can help to improve your state. I know you're going through a lot anyway, but trying to improve your state, and then you're feeling better, maybe a bit more inspired action. So I'm going to be asking you a question. In conflicts, which role or roles do you notice yourself playing? Because depending on who you're, maybe hitting heads together with, it might change depending on who you might have a bit of an issue with. And we all do at times. Have a think about, who's playing what role. I find it very interesting. I notice it now. And then which roles do you notice others playing? Very interesting.
Mm-hmm. So Susie says all of them at different times.
Yes, good, Susie. Thank you for being honest. So have I been as well.
Mo says mostly the victim. I'm soft and also I can be a good rescuer.
Bless you, Mo. Thank you for saying that about the victim. We all do it at times. It's just part of being human. But it's good to kind of go, well, always those questions. Well, what do I need to do about this? What can I do about this? And what can you do to improve that situation?
Tony says rescuer and victim.
Yes.
Laura, rescuer sometimes, victim sometimes. Carolyn, I've also been all of those roles.
Yes. Yes, good. It's just interesting to be aware, isn't it? So that sometimes when patterns of behavior are happening, we get to notice it. We're kind of like, oh, I can see what's happening there. So you almost like try and step off that drama triangle and change those patterns of behavior.
And just one more, Jan says all of them. That's why I'm so angry all the time.
Oof, anger is so draining. Sometimes it's good to be angry about things. Sometimes that gets things done. If we've been feeling in that victim mode, sometimes, you know, getting angry is a good way of changing and being proactive on what you need to do, something a little bit different. And what could you do in the future to help safeguard yourself? Think about that, what you need to do. For me personally, I keep away, or I keep at arm's length from certain family at times. That's what I do, and then focus on those who are there for me. What do you do? What could you do in the future to help safeguard yourself? It's good to think these things through, because then, like I say, you have greater clarity, and then you can maybe shake it up and do something a little bit different and notice if it works.
Right, Mo says listen to a point. So
Okay.
presumably, yeah, if someone's trying to put a point across, to listen to that.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. Brilliant. Now, I am just going to share with you about the orange, and I'm going to come out and stop sharing, because sometimes it's nice to just, instead of just seeing slides. There we go. Brilliant. Okay, so I don't know, does anybody know of Dr. Wayne Dyer? Just put your hand up if you do, if you've heard of Dr. Wayne Dyer. He was like a motivational speaker, really about deeper levels of life, an American guy, and many, many books. And he's gone now. He actually died, it was actually a week before Neil, I suddenly discovered, and that's when I discovered him. He's from the Hay House books. Lots of great stuff, lots of YouTube clips on him. Great to listen to, makes you feel better. Puts you on the straight and narrow, which is always quite good, isn't it? Now, he had a great metaphor about the orange. So when it comes to conflict, so I'm going to ask you, and of course it's kind of rhetorical, but if I give this orange a really good squeeze, like really squeeze it, what's going to come out of it? Is it apple juice? No. Is it pomegranate juice? No, of course not. It's orange juice, because when I put it under pressure, that's what comes out. That's what's inside. Now, when it comes to somebody who's causing you some grief, or we come into those disputes, when they are squeezed, what comes out of them? And maybe pop that in the chat. What do you, if there's somebody where you might be having issues with, when you give them a good squeeze, when you put the pressure on, what comes out of them? Is it love and understanding? Quite possibly not. Thank you for that, Mo. I can see you. Anger, truth. Thank you for that, Mo. Anybody else? For me, when it comes to certain people, it's judgment coming from them. It's quite harsh. They're quite critical. Sour. Thank you, Jan. Yes. Yeah. You know what? That's what's happening with them when they're pressed. How do they behave? Really interesting. And let's just take that another level. And then when they send that anger or judgment or criticism towards you, and you are squeezed, misunderstanding, thank you, Susie. When you are squeezed, what comes out of you? Is it love and understanding again? Or do you feel angry? How do you feel when you are squeezed? Just have a think about that. Thank you, Mo. You start running away. So when you're squeezed, for me, I'll get angry. I don't know about you, but you know, when somebody's putting on me, I also go into victim mode. I get upset. That's how I feel, because that's what's inside. That's what's triggering and coming out of you. So notice these patterns of defensiveness, says Marilyn. Thank you. And Tony says distress. Thank you, Salima. Anger, frustration, because when you're squeezed, that's what's coming up. Thank you, Lynn. Overwhelmed. And it makes you feel small. Yes. And we start to shut down. We do, very much so. And notice this pattern of behavior. So when you're pressed, when you're pushed down, that's what's happening for, you know, and there's this kind of pattern of behavior. Notice that. What can you do differently? And, you know, we can't change people, but we can change how we react. Thank you, Belinda. I agree with Lynn with that overwhelmed, small and feeling shut down. Absolutely. So notice how they're making you feel and what can you do differently. And like I say, it's about how we react. And it's the thoughts in our head, isn't it? It's our chatter, what we're saying to ourselves. And it's quite draining. If you're angry, frustrated, that's really draining you mentally, emotionally, and physically. And you've got a lot on your plate already. So notice how it's making you feel. And then maybe change how you're feeling. Sometimes I put an elastic band around my wrist where something was going on causing me grief. And every time I kept thinking about it, I twang it and just make it hurt a little. It's like, come on, snap out of this. Think about something else. Think about those who are in your life. So yeah, it's a very interesting one when it comes to being squeezed. Like I say, it's those patterns of behavior that keep happening. And so this is what Dr. Wayne says. He says, when you squeeze an orange, you'll always get orange juice coming out because that's what's inside. So notice how you're behaving in your patterns of behavior. And is it doing you good or is it draining you? Just notice that, how you're treating yourself every day. Okay. And then obviously I can't see the chat anymore. So Michael, do let me know. Now we're going to come on to paid carers. Not everybody here will be dealing with professional carers, but some of you might be or may have to in future. So paid carers, do they actually care? It's a really big one. And if you're dealing with care, paid care coming in, if your loved one needs help in the home to remain as independent as possible, or you need more help to look after them, you might employ a professional carer, and they're also known as a personal assistant, a PA, or domiciliary care. And professional carers are either supplied by a care agency, or you can employ them directly yourself. Quite interesting. So there's two, and I found I've used a number of care agencies in the past, and I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, to a point where I've ended up using private carers. But there's goods and bad in both of those. So care agencies, they hire professional carers, but they also do all the checks that you don't need to, and the references that need to be carried out, and the insurance. So they also ensure the correct insurance, so you don't have to worry. They do all of that, but then often they can be cost a bit more. And if you use your professional carers and unable to come, they will then sort out another paid carer. You don't need to worry about it. But the trouble is, and what I found, maybe you're not finding this at present, but I found that they had a higher turnover of staff, meaning that you receive different professional carers into your home. I found that draining at times because Neil couldn't speak and he was having to be hoisted and had a peg feeding tube. There was quite a lot involved. So I would train them up, show them what they need to do, and then they would be gone again. I just didn't have the time for that. And of course, it was costly as well. They can be expensive. Now, when it comes to private carers, you have to employ them yourself. So there are various things. So there's good and bad on both sides. If they are not they'll be self-employed. So you'll have to do the DBS checks and checking their, if they have a criminal record, and you'd have to check the references. You'd also have to look at insurance, but it can be done. It's a bit of a pain setting up, but once it's done, it's all good. And if your usual professional carer, if you're getting them in privately, is unable to work or they're sick for that day, you will have to cover, of course, or get a paid carer to back up. So there's things to think about, but you might have a few. I had a few different ones coming in at different times, sometimes in the week and at weekends. So I had a number of them, like a handful of paid carers, really useful. And I personally found paid carers in the end, they were great, because those who were private, because they came for years. So they knew Neil before he lost his speech, and they were still coming, which is really powerful. So even though Neil couldn't speak, they knew his personality, which was really lovely. So they'd still give that dialogue, even though he couldn't reply. They knew what he was like and that he was very cheeky. So they'd be cheeky and funny with him. And I found that they were cheaper, and there were no management fees as well. But there's always some issues every now and then that come up. And professional carers can help in the home with a wide range of tasks, of course. Getting your loved one in and out of bed in the morning or at night, helping with personal hygiene, such as washing and dressing and maintaining personal appearance, maybe helping with toileting and using continence aids, some things that we had to do, and preparing meals and helping with eating and drinking. So there's a whole host of things that they can do, and picking up prescriptions or helping to manage medication. There's a whole range depending. And getting your loved one out of the house just to meet friends or just to offer companionship for a few hours. And I found that really powerful. It just changed the dynamics in the house. Otherwise, poor old Neil, it's just my mug that he's seeing all the time. So having those paid carers in was actually quite lovely. And some of them for me are still friends now today. I saw one actually this afternoon before all of this. So, you know, that can be really powerful because they have a deeper level of understanding of what's going on. But I will say that I have, like I say, the good, the bad and the ugly. And there was one particular carer that came one afternoon. He's supposed to be a befriender and supposed to just sit and hang out with Neil, but he kind of didn't do hardly any of that. So I told him all about Neil, told him what Neil might like to chat about. And with that, he went and took him out into the garden in his wheelchair. And Neil had these awful choking fits at times. But what I found was when I was working in the back of the house here, I could hear all this kind of coughing and choking from Neil. And I knew that he had issues. And I thought, oh, Damon will deal with that. He'll be sorting that out in a minute. But it got worse and worse and worse to a point where I went running outside. Neil was having a full-on choking fit. And this guy didn't even look up from his mobile phone. He was busy texting. It was absolutely shocking. And he won't be the only one. So be honest, you know, let them know. I mean, I went out there to tell him and let him know what was going on. And when he brought him back in, what I found was they were in the living room. I carried on again, knowing that they were okay. And then when I did walk back in there, this guy was actually laid out asleep on Neil's bed whilst Neil was left slumped in the wheelchair. It beggars belief, I know. And of course, I immediately let the care agency know because he was from a care agency. And I said, please don't send him again. So if you do find anything like that, I know that mobile phones can be a bit of an issue. Let them know, you know, don't sit in silence. Do ring up, because I find that particularly with the older generation, you feel a bit embarrassed to ring up about somebody who's been hanging about in the house and you've been chatting to, and you've kind of found that you're kind of a little bit like friends. But if they're sat texting and they're not getting on with what they should be doing, you need to let the agency know or let them know. It's not acceptable. I don't know if anything's come up, Michael.
Yes, so Mo has posted to say so much hard work goes into having paid care workers, I think, with briefing them and everything like that.
Yes.
But then they just leave, and it's so demoralizing when they leave. If only the council would get that. Yeah,
they do need to know more, and I have put that to the council a few times, you know, when we've had big groups and meetings. It does need to be improved, Mo, thank you. Yeah, it does, but it's down to us to vocalise that as well. So, you know, I find with paid carers, you know, they're either those who care and those who don't. And I mean, on a deeper level, some just get it and they have empathy and compassion. Those are the guys that you want in your home, and you don't want the other. And if you're noticing it, push back and say, I need somebody else. So just let them know, don't suffer in silence. Okay, and then it was getting your loved one settled for bed in the evening. So there's a whole range of things that paid carers can do. But just remember, paid care is there to help, not to hinder. And I find some of us, as you know, unpaid carers, we've been finding that it has massively hindered. Very, very stressful at times, because, you know, suddenly you're finding you're having to kind of manage staff kind of thing. And you just don't do that. It's not the sort of thing you do. There's so much that we have to learn as carers, don't we? Okay. Going on to another, from one negative to another, I do apologise, but when we lack support from others, it's just being more aware. So when you're, you know, when you're stepping up to the mark to care, shouldn't others do their bit? And what I found, there was a few of Neil's friends. We had some friends who always came. You could count them on one hand, really, because Neil had been ill for so long, and he wasn't able to speak. So listen, it wasn't a barrel of laughter to come and see Neil. I know that it can be quite draining. But there was one particular, so 2 doors down from me, there's a guy called Chris. He cares for his mum across the road, and he has one sister, but she's moved out of the area with her family. She's gone on and she's doing other things. So he's kind of been left to look after their elderly mum with paid care coming in. And he said, oh, you know, that's how it is. I've had to step up. I said, well, welcome to the club, is what I said to him on that day. But, you know, shouldn't she be allowed to go off and have her life and do what she's doing? And he doesn't have a family. So he's on his own, and he works. So he doesn't have children, and he's dealing with all of that as well. So it was quite interesting with that dynamic. But he's fine now. He's doing well. So he's got things in place so that he's gone off fishing this week. And then I think about 2 of Neil's close friends. One came when I would wheel Neil down to Twickenham Stadium to the rugby. I had him there on the front row, and then I'd wheel him straight back. And I found out from some of the other friends that another one of Neil's really close friends, who had not been for years to see Neil, had come and probably come past our front door, but didn't even stick his head around the door to say hi. I was so angry and upset, and I'm sure some of you have found those similar experiences. And I was so frustrated. I moaned to a paid carer who came in the next morning. I said, look, you know, I know it's not a barrel of laughs. She said, well, I'd still tell him anyway. And I still had his number on my phone. So I actually texted him and I said, hey, Gary, how you doing? Hey, listen, we were there at the rugby as you were. It would have been great to see you. Next time you're there, let us know so we can catch up. Well, I pressed send, and within 60 seconds, my phone started to ring. I hadn't spoken to this guy in years. And I laughed and went, oh my God, Sam, he's ringing. So I answered, and I actually cheekily said, well, you're a blast from the past. That's exactly what I said. And he said, don't make me feel any more guilty than I already do. And I kind of laughed with him. And then we caught up. I told him about what was going on with Neil. I said, hey, listen, just come for 10 minutes. Neil would love to see you and see what you've been up to. So that's where we left it when we said our goodbyes. But the thing is, did he come? Did he come and see Neil? No, he didn't. But from that point forward, I let him go. And we focus on the taps again, those who would come and hang out and spend time with me and with Neil. And those people are very precious to us, and they are still precious to me today. Very, very powerful. And with there was one other guy actually, and again, it was at the rugby, because that's where I can just kind of like bump into them. This is exactly what he said to me. He said the weeks had turned into the months, had turned into years, and I have finally cut my losses. That's what he said to me, word for word. And I thought, well, all you have to do is come and say hi once in a blue moon. But he wouldn't, and some people wouldn't. And it's down to us sometimes to let go. I don't know if anything's coming up in the chat there.
Yeah, Sarah, and Jan says she disagrees with an earlier point and says that a sister shouldn't be allowed never to help out, and so I think it comes into those kind of potential sibling tensions in the caring relationship.
Yeah, so that sister should have come to help out every now and then. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It should be just left to one other person. There's other people on the planet. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
And just to say, well, it was great that you've introduced that topic today, Sarah, and we are planning to hold another session specifically looking at kind of tensions within the family related to caring.
Yeah, it's very tough, really hard. So if family have fallen short, there'll be a number of reasons. We all have hectic lives anyway, juggling work and family with little time for anything else, including helping you, which, you know, is often how we can feel. And maybe work is dominating their lives at the moment and taking priority. Sometimes maybe they just don't understand what you're going through. And even if you do explain, which I've tried to in the past, they still don't get it. And some people just don't. Or maybe, and I found this with some folk, with some of Neil's friends, they feel awkward around someone who is ill or needing help. So they actually stay away. They actually ask on the grapevine how Neil was, but they didn't come and see him for themselves. And then maybe they just don't want to get involved, and hoping that you take over will relieve them of the responsibility. I certainly think there's a fair bit of that going on. And Michael, anybody else?
Yes, yes. I think probably in response to the anecdote you told about Neil's friend not coming to visit, and Marilyn says some people can't cope with illness in others and they don't know what to say. And Michael says, I never see my family, they don't even call on the phones.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Michael. That's very sad. Have you got good friends? I hope you have got some good friends.
Well, yeah, and he says their loss, not mine.
Yeah, absolutely. Was it George Bernard Shaw said, family are good friends in another city? Which at times they can be, most definitely, definitely.
Yeah, and Mo says, I find friends are a better family than actual family.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mo.
And Michael is a regular at Care for a Cuppa and strong part of our community of carers, and says other carers are my friends.
Oh, that's wonderful. They have a deeper understanding, don't they? I find with other carers, they know, they have a deeper level of understanding because they've been through it. They understand, hence us all hanging out this afternoon as well. But the knock-on effects of avoidance, you know, when others avoid us or refuse to help, we can feel betrayed, can't we? It can lead to feelings of frustration and anger, very much me. And especially when we are giving so much whilst others give so very little. Sometimes it is about vocalizing a bit more, but you can't change people. Sometimes it is down to us to initiate that contact. And look, but there will be times where we have to let certain friends or family go. Sometimes we just have to do that. And I did that and it made me feel so much better, I can tell you. So letting go of those who refuse to help can often be a weight lifted. And it really can. Focus on those who are there for you. Cherish them.